And when someone leaves, he'll say, bye-bye. Yes, Neil, I'm going to go. Bye-bye. Yes, Neil, it's time for me to go. Bye-bye. Yes, I'm leaving now. And he will start to cry. He will just break out in tears. That is a typical moment with Neil when you would leave the house. It didn't matter who it was leaving, whether it was myself, Louise, Neil's Uncle Fred, his best friend Jefferson, or even when Paula Dean finished up her TV show. Loves Paula Dean. Neil would say, in his own way, bye-bye, you're leaving now? It's time to go? And when it was clear to him that you were, that it was, he would break down in tears. Now, it's not that simple kind of crying, that, happens when, we're sad and it hurts a little bit. No, Neil's crying, and I saved you with the microphone, is ear-splitting. And you can hear it all throughout the house. And it could go on for a long time. It comes, you see, from the bottom of his feet and works all the way up. It's the kind of cry that you have where you run out of air and keep going until you pull in that breath again. And then he cries some more. When Neil was about 8, it could take him sometimes 45 minutes to slow down and to calm himself down after someone left. I would have to stop what I was doing and go over and sit with him and simply put my arm around him and let him cry it out because you couldn't stop him. We got to the point that when it came time for someone to leave, we would whisper and let them sneak out a back way. Because it was a mess, and it would be difficult if you had to be the one who wasn't leaving. You were always kind of glad when you were the one to go. Because the one who was here had to stay and to comfort a little boy. Neil grieved so hard for those who left because his love for them is tremendously deep. Without language to express the depth of his grief, he turned to the language of tears to address that yawning emptiness which he felt in the face of the loss of the one whom he loves. The feelings and emotions which he had to sort out, to come to grips with, to learn to deal with, was a taxing and overwhelming undertaking. Because like all of us, when we grieve, there is anger that the person has left. There is sadness because the joy and contentment which we felt in their presence is over. There is confusion because Neil didn't know when or if he would get to see them again. There is hurt, wondering why this person would be leaving. There is fear and anxiety. And all of this is simply too much. And tears are the only response to such an overload of emotion. In our scripture lesson today, David and Jonathan lay across each other's shoulders and weep. And the text as it's read and the commentators talk about it, it's not just simple tears. It is that shoulder shaking, ground foundational shaking weep. Their bodies are racked with sobs, for the necessity of leaving one another was now real, and Jonathan's father Saul is at the heart of it. They were deep and loving friends of the kind, that instantly hit it off when they meet and feel that great joy and that sense of of completion and fullness and being in one another's presence. But now, our scripture tells us of the time of King Saul's madness and of his jealousy with David. Saul, you see, is certain that David is planning a revolt, that David is going to overthrow the throne and keep Saul from reigning, and one day then Saul's son Jonathan from sitting on the throne of Israel. And our text today is the farewell between these two close companions when it is clear that Saul is seeking out David to kill him. Jonathan has learned of Saul's plans and has come out to this field with this elaborate ritual of shooting the arrows as a signal for David that it is safe and okay, so that he can inform David that they might see each other one last time and that David may flee. It is to be armed conflict between Saul and David, and for Jonathan, who loves both men, he finds himself in the middle between them. It is clear that David and Jonathan must part and will never see one another again. In verse 41, it says, David rose from beside the stone heap and prostrated himself with his face to the ground. He bowed 3 times, and they kissed each other and wept with each other. And David wept the more. Their grief is great. In their tears and kisses, they seek to express the vigor and the extent of the love that they share. The penetration of the sadness of their circumstances has driven to the very core of their being. And there are no words for such pain. And so they weep. They weep for their loss. They weep for the danger that they were in. They weep for the end of the physicality of their relationship. They weep for the plans that will go unfulfilled. They weep for the undreamed dreams. They weep for all that had died as their relationship has come to an end. And their grief is deep. Grief, you see, is the experience of the loss of something treasured. From that first broken toy to the death of a beloved soul, grief is a companion in our life. It is a powerful and life-altering experience which we would do well to learn to walk through. Unhealed and unaddressed grief can cause us to get stuck in our life and not be able to receive all of the new things that come our way. Julie Hilton Steele writes about walking around the lake early one summer morning, encountering the flora and the fauna. Suddenly, a colorful blur shoots by her face and catches her attention, and when it slowed down enough, she identified it as a hummingbird. And this hummingbird, you see, had stopped right in front of her face, looking at her and gazing upon her. The bird hung in the air, she says, flapping its wings 1,000 times a minute so that it might hover there, marveling at the amount of energy that the bird was consuming and expending to keep it suspended in this place. It occurred to Steele how much time and emotion and energy that we humans expend trying to keep ourselves suspended in the same place, be it a situation in the present or in thoughts in the past. She says many times we are trapped in an unhealthy relationship, a way of life, or a dead-end job because we fear the consequences of change. The pain of saying goodbye, the lack of confidence, the anxiety of dealing with the unknown prevent us from taking leave in order to discover the plans God has in store for us. we human beings, and especially those of us in the church, spend tremendous energy holding together a situation that needs grief. We are afraid that if we let go of what we are feeling right now, that we will lose even more. Afraid that whatever is out there before us can't be better than what we have known. We are afraid that the changes that are before us will require more from us than we are able to give. We are afraid of the emotions that swirl around us like the sparks from a popping fire. We are afraid of getting burned by those emotional sparks. Joyce Rupp, in the book Praying Our Goodbyes, says, "I believe that if we are willing to move inside the heart of the experience, to live patiently through the process of grief, even as we acknowledge the difficult, painful emotions, that we can experience the wonder of spiritual growth and the marvel of new depths of faith in our relationship with God and with others." And from Neil and David and Jonathan, we can learn how to work through our grief. Neil moves deep within the heart of his experience of grief. And there, within the center of that loss and pain, tears become the language of the ache and the sorrow that a heart feels. He is afraid neither of the tears, what they represent, nor the depth of the sadness that they express. Leo Tolstoy says, "Only people who are capable of loving strongly can also suffer great sorrow. But this same necessity of loving serves to counteract their grief and heals them." Simply put, it is the love that we share with one another that, when that love is broken for whatever reason, causes us grief. But that love is the light that leads us back to health and wholeness. It is the love that Neil shares with his beloved that is at the root of his pain. But were there no shared love, there would be no pain. But it is Neil's trust in that love that he shares and his willingness to express and to experience that pain that unleashes the healing abilities of love on the heart of his sadness and that mends that wound. And the same is true for David and Jonathan. They do not deny the depth of their loss. No, that is evident in their tears, but they trust what is in the future. And they trust that God is already in that future, in between them, there to bless, to guide, and to devote attention to their healing and well-being. Listen to what Jonathan says as they part for the last time. "Go in peace, since both of us have sworn in the name of the Lord, saying, 'The Lord shall be between me and you, and between my descendants and your descendants forever.'" Jonathan invokes a blessing upon David as they part. He and David leave with this blessing between them. How, I wonder, how would that change our living if every time we left one of our beloveds, we shared a blessing? How would it change our living to invoke the blessing of God's watchful eye to rest upon us, and then to trust that the space between us shall be full of the divine presence?